And that's an interesting comment, Lawrence, because that also ties in very neatly with one of the questions we had on the survey was actually, if you're not at a level of maturity, which is kind of a minimum at this stage, how long do you think it would take you to, get back to being competitive? And there was a lot of, depending on the industry, there were a lot of gaps, but, it was around 2 to 3 years for a lot of companies. And that is, listening to you, that's a lifetime. Mm-hmm. In terms of what's happened. So I think speed is absolutely critical here. So in terms of CEOs, CIOs, and chief AI officers, what do they need to be doing today to not sort of, sit on rotting assets, for want of a better term?
Yeah. So the reasons I think speed is so important is that people that adopt these types of technologies can see the ability to go from zero to hero really, really fast. So if you just think about the technology space, let's go back to the enterprise software space where we start the conversation. 10 years ago, definitely 20 years ago, it would take several years for an early stage company to develop and deliver value from a new technology. You can literally do that at a tenth of the time now. So your competition's coming in, but you've got a 3-year lead. So worst case, they're not going to catch up in 3 years. They can catch up really, really quickly. So I think the asset that is currently maturing will rot very, very quickly because competition can zoom past. And I think that's the issue. It's not anymore the recognition of the risk and the opportunity. It's actually calibrating. You've got to move fast. And I think that's where the DNA issue is, even for technology companies who have historically moved a lot faster than traditional businesses, but they've still thought about quarterly cycles, release cycles, roadmaps in multiple months, whereas modern generation is, what do I do today? This concept of the forward deploy engineer, which is sort of a descriptive that's come out, it's a combined product manager with a business consultant and a software engineer almost in one. You do that in a cycle of an hour or a day, as opposed to, let me come and do some research, let me come back with some requirements, let me send you those requirements. Okay, let's get those requirements signed off. I'll start coding and months later I'll deliver something. That cycle has just been crushed. And so I think that's where the issue is and the opportunity is. I don't think anyone's fighting the value anymore, but I think they're still not sure about how fast this thing can go.
So from a customer standpoint, we're talking about value, forward deployed engineers. Are they understanding that value? And what is, ultimately, if it's not about feature function, because they are so easily, delivered by AI in a completely different way and faster and more effectively. So it's much more the focus on what the value that it delivers. What's the value as part of that cycle of that forward deployed engineer?
Yeah, so I'll unpack value a little bit more because it's fascinating for me, having spent most of my career on value propositions and value-based positioning. Again, I've mentioned 3 times my friends at Anthropic, to have that sort of growth that they've had organically, intrinsically that's because of usage. Right. Okay, and most software that is successful is because it's used. Most software that isn't successful is because it's not used. Usage is a very, very big proxy for value. And I think that's what's interesting, that the organic bottoms-up usage intrinsically has delivered enough perception of value and probably value. I think the challenge for a lot of companies is figuring out what's the baseline. Mm-hmm. And so the quicker you can get started, you can then establish a baseline and then accelerate from it. So I think Absolutely. It's a very complex discussion. I think value that used to be talked about in the past, which is if I spend X amount over Y period, what's my return? It's very difficult to estimate that. So figure out how to get started, build a baseline, accelerate the value, and then you'll get evidence. And do that fast rather than a typical multi-month or even multi-year project.
So you're Chief Strategy Officer at HTEC. You've been with the company just over a year now. What excites you the most about your job at this particular moment, as in with everything and the speed that everything is moving?
Yeah, so I've been involved with HTEC. I was their second ever client when I was CEO of a software company in Silicon Valley. So I've sort of watched the journey over almost 10 years. So the reason I started working with HTEC well before the pandemic was because I saw the need for a very agile and premium mentality of engineer. 2026 and everything I've talked about, you need velocity, you need expertise, you need people that understand value realization. I'm almost writing the script of the DNA of HTEC, and therefore I believe that timing is the success for most companies, finding the right, you talk about this product market fit. In a conceptual sense, I think we have such a good product market fit at HTEC. 2,500 plus or minus highly skilled engineers that have built the business around finding value, rapidly delivering high quality. This is so analogous to the way the market's going. And it's not about SaaS being dead or not being dead. It's about this DNA issue. And I think we've got such the DNA because of how we've developed over the last decade. Now the market is all in that direction. And the forward deploy engineer is really, it's sort of almost like a catch-all description. It doesn't mean the engineer is sitting on site next to, it's more about the mentality of fast identification of the requirements, validating the value, specifying and building very, very fast. It's that mentality rather than do I put 10 people on someone's site? And I think that's why it's so exciting for HTEC right now.
Okay. Lawrence, thank you very much for your insights and your candor. Really appreciated your time. It's clear that we're at a major turning point in terms of not just what software does, but how it's conceived, built and delivered. And if you are at a turning point and you are looking to modernize your system, certainly get in touch. We'd love to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.